Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel Proficiency Decoded. This channel helps in decoding the layers of knowledge with ease. Proficiency Decoded brings structured, thoughtful explanations to every topic.
Today's video explains about the US new tariff rates applied towards different countries. Tariffs and sanctions are tools used by governments to influence international trade and foreign policy. I will first be explaining what is tariff and sanctions. I will next explain the impact on economic sustainability, followed by economic impact on American consumers and industries, and lastly conclude by explaining the global economic implications for the imposed tariff hike. Tariffs are taxes applied to imported goods. When the US imposes a tariff on products from India or any country, it means those goods become more expensive in the US market. The goal is often to protect domestic industry or to penalize other nations for specific policies, such as India's continued oil imports from Russia. Tariffs do not prohibit trade, they raise costs for importers and ultimately for consumers. Sanctions are broader restrictions, sometimes banning trade altogether or blocking financial transactions with targeted countries, companies, or individuals. They can include embargoes, bans, financial restrictions, or visa prohibitions, and are designed to pressure countries into changing behavior for political or security reasons. Recently, US policymakers have begun using tariffs almost as sanctions in disguise. For instance, the doubling of cumulative US tariffs on Indian goods to 50% was explicitly intended to punish India's ongoing purchase of Russian oil. This approach blurs the lines between trade regulation tariffs and punitive measures sanctions. Impact for general public. Higher prices. When tariffs rise, importers pay more for foreign goods. These increased costs are typically passed on to American consumers, resulting in higher prices on everyday items, especially those lacking domestic alternatives. Reduced variety and quality. Tariffs often make foreign goods less competitive, limiting options for consumers. This can lead to less choice and sometimes lower quality, especially for specialized or niche products. Inflationary pressure. Large-scale tariff hikes, such as the recent 50% rate on Indian goods, feed into general inflation by increasing the price of imported goods across many sectors. Over time, this erodes purchasing power and raises household costs. Impact on industries. Input costs and competitiveness. Many industries, especially those using global supply chains, face higher costs for materials and components. This handicaps sectors like manufacturing, automotive, textiles, and technology, which rely heavily on affordable imports. Export handicaps and market losses. Countries targeted by tariffs like India see diminished demand for their exports, leading to job losses and lower production. Indian sectors such as textiles, carpets, and food processing have already faced cancelled or reduced orders, threatening hundreds of thousands of jobs. Supply chain disruption. Tariffs force companies to reconsider sourcing strategies, sometimes relocating supply chains to other countries or regions at great expense and logistical risk. This can slow growth and productivity, particularly for industries that cannot easily switch suppliers. Sectoral unevenness. While some domestic industries may briefly benefit from reduced foreign competition, most face broader challenges. Protectionist gains are usually outweighed by higher input costs, lower efficiency, and eventual declines in overall employment. The escalation of trade tensions. President Donald Trump's second term has marked an unprecedented escalation in global trade warfare, transforming international commerce through a comprehensive tariff regime that spans nearly every major trading partner. Beginning with selective measures in January 2025, the administration has systematically expanded tariff coverage to encompass roughly 90 countries, pushing average U.S. tariff rates from 2.5% to an estimated 18.6% by August 2025. This comprehensive approach differs markedly from previous trade disputes by targeting not just specific countries like China, but implementing what Trump terms reciprocal tariffs across America's entire trading network. The architecture of modern tariff policy. Trump's tariff system operates through multiple overlapping mechanisms, creating a complex web of duties that can compound dramatically on individual products. The foundation consists of a 10% universal baseline tariff imposed on nearly all imports since April 2025, supplemented by country-specific reciprocal tariffs ranging from 10% to 50% based on calculated trade imbalances. The targeting strategy extends beyond China to include traditional allies. India faces a 50% tariff rate, comprising a 25% reciprocal tariff plus an additional 25% penalty for purchasing Russian oil. European Union exports encounter a 15% rate, while Mexico and Canada have experienced fluctuating tariffs ranging from 25% to 35% depending on ongoing negotiations. Domestic price pressures. The most immediate consequence of the tariff regime has been upward pressure on consumer prices throughout the United States. Economic analysis indicates that tariffs function essentially as a tax on imports, with costs ultimately passed to American consumers through higher retail prices. Industrial delays. Initial price stability resulted from temporary shock absorbers. Companies reluctantly absorbed costs to maintain market share. Importers built stockpiles before tariff implementation, and businesses delayed price adjustments to avoid being first movers in their markets. However, these measures represent unsustainable short-term strategies that cannot continue indefinitely. Survey data reveals the extent of anticipated price increase that the manufacturers plan to pass tariff-related costs to consumers. The Center for American Progress estimates these policies could cost American households an average of $5,200 annually. Manufacturing and automotive industries. The automotive sector faces particularly severe challenges due to 25% tariffs on vehicles and auto parts, combined with 50% duties on steel and aluminum inputs. These overlapping tariffs create cascading cost increases throughout complex supply chains that frequently cross international borders. Major automakers like Ford and General Motors are experiencing part shortages and considering price increases of $5,000 to $10,000 per vehicle. Agricultural sector. American agriculture has emerged as a primary casualty of the trade war, facing both higher input costs and retaliatory tariffs from major export markets. China, Canada, and Mexico, representing the three largest agricultural export destinations, have all imposed counter-tariffs specifically targeting American farm products. Technology and electronics. The electronics industry faces supply chain disruption due to tariffs on semiconductors, consumer electronics, and critical components. Companies are struggling with price transparency issues as tariff rates fluctuate rapidly, making accurate product pricing increasingly difficult. The semiconductor industry, with its complex global value chains, faces particular challenges as companies reconfigure supply chains to avoid tariff exposure. Strategic countermeasures. Foreign governments have responded with calculated retaliation designed to maximize political pressure on the Trump administration. Countries have deliberately targeted agricultural products and manufactured goods from politically significant regions, particularly Republican, supporting areas in the Midwest and rural communities. Canada has imposed 25% tariffs on U.S. agricultural goods, appliances, and various consumer products. The European Union has reimposed historical retaliatory tariffs while developing new measures targeting additional American products. Economic consequences for trading partners. The global economic impact extends far beyond direct trade effects. Countries heavily dependent on U.S. market access face significant economic disruption, while others benefit from trade diversion as American importers seek alternative suppliers. India's economy faces particular strain, with Moody's projecting GDP growth could slow by 0.3 percentage points if the full 50% tariff remains in place. The Indian garment industry, which serves major U.S. retailers, is experiencing midnight panic calls from American buyers demanding production relocations. Market volatility and financial stress. The tariff announcements have triggered significant financial market volatility. The initial April 2025 reciprocal tariff announcement caused the S&P 500 to fall over 4.88% in a single day, while the Nasdaq experienced its largest point loss in history. Long-term structural changes. The current trade war is accelerating long-term structural changes in the global economy. Companies are diversifying supply chains away from high-tariff countries, potentially creating permanent shifts in trade patterns. This process of deglobalization may reduce economic efficiency but increase supply chain resilience. Research indicates that while tariffs may provide short-term protection for specific domestic industries, they ultimately produce net economic losses. A comprehensive analysis of the 2018 to 2019 tariffs found approximately $51 billion in consumer losses, with net economic damage of $7.2 billion after accounting for protected industry gains. Economic nationalism. The Trump tariff regime represents more than temporary trade friction. It signals a fundamental shift toward economic nationalism that could reshape global commerce for years to come. The current approach prioritizes bilateral trade balance over multilateral economic efficiency, challenging decades of trade liberalization. The success of this strategy will ultimately depend on whether the United States can negotiate favorable bilateral agreements while maintaining domestic economic growth. Uncertain economy. Early evidence suggests mixed results, with significant consumer costs, industrial disruption, and international retaliation offsetting any potential benefits from protected industries. The global economy faces a period of heightened uncertainty as businesses, governments, and consumers adapt to this new reality. The ultimate resolution of these trade tensions will likely require either comprehensive negotiated settlements or a fundamental reconsideration of the current tariff approach.
Thank you for your time and support. Please subscribe to my channel for such informative and explanatory videos on different topics.